Yo, hello. What's up, y'all? Okay, so I had to jump on because pretty seismic shift in geopolitics just happened. So, President Maduro of Venezuela has just been announced to be captured. Uh, he was captured this morning on Saturday, January 3rd, 2026. And this, the, we are in a different world now, okay? And in my opinion, we are now closely aligned with the multipolar world order that China and Russia want. Venezuela has allies with Russia, Cuba, Iran. Iran already spoke about it, condemned this. Russia condemned this. But here, let's get some facts. But we're now in a much more unstable world. Trump said that he was going to stop wars. Nick Fuentes on the far right said that this is a giant scam. That MAGA is a giant scam, and Trump being no new wars, that was also a scam. Some people on the left, like me, have been warning about this, that he is a giant scam con artist, and does not hold really true to any values that he has, except for his own personal self-interest, private interest. But anyways, okay, let's just hop in to this article by Reuters. Washington, January 3rd, the U.S. attacked Venezuela and deposed its long-serving autocratic president Nicolas Maduro on Saturday. President Donald Trump said in Washington's most direct intervention in Latin America since the 1989 invasion of Panama. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country, Trump said in a Truth Social post. This is just wild. Ahead of the overnight strikes, the U.S. had accused Maduro of running a narco state and rigging the 2024 election, which the opposition said it won overwhelmingly. This is why this is so dangerous, because there's actually justification here, okay? There was a constitutional crisis that happened. The opposition leader, Juan Guaido, had to flee the country because Maduro lost the election and decided to stay in power. So there's justification here, which is what makes this so dangerous. There's justification on our... That's how wars, like world wars, really start, where each side says they have reasonable justification to launch more military armed conflict. And that's what we're getting now. In the Venezuelan leader, a 63-year-old former bus driver handpicked by the dying Hugo Chavez to succeed him in 2013, has denied those claims and said Washington was intent on taking control of his nation's oil reserves, the largest in the world. That can also be true, which it is true. It's just another oil war. So this is Iraq again, and this is like the Gulf War. So we went from Afghanistan, Iraq, for oil. Now we're going to Venezuela for oil. All in the meantime, China is, yes, using oil, but expanding their energy production beyond just the limits of oil. But that's all we can do, because this is like, if you've been following my channel, the Trump administration is just a giant fossil fuel under a trench coat. So fossil fuels under a trench coat. But these many things under that trench coat. The U.S. has not made such a direct intervention in its backyard region since the invasion of Panama 37 years ago to depose military leader Manuel Noriega over similar allegations. Venezuela's ruling Chavismo movement, named for Maduro's revered predecessor, said civilians and military personnel died in Saturday's strikes, but did not give figures. Great. So looks like Trump's military, the United States military, killed people in Venezuela. Maduro may face criminal charges in the U.S. Okay, this is wild that he's captured. That we captured. This is such a profound escalation in the international order. Oh my goodness. Trump said the operation was carried out in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement, promising more details at 11 a.m. press conference at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. Great. Maduro was captured by a team that included elite U.S. Special Forces, including the U.S. Army Delta Force, a U.S. official told Reuters. Republican U.S. Senator Mike Lee said Secretary of State Marco Rubio had told him Maduro would stand trial on criminal charges in the United States. And this is what's... So we've got Republican senators already on board with this, and there's no act of Congress that essentially... It requires an act of Congress for the United States to go to actual war, like in World War II. But, it's tricky here because... And also very frustrating because if this gets us into World War, it took not an act of Congress to get us into World War, just the president. One man, this crazy con artist, scammer, gets us into a World War because without Congress, just because he calls Maduro a narco-terrorist, whatever his justification is. Now he is exerting influence in the Western Hemisphere. So Russia and China, who are ardent proponents of displacing the United States atop its worldwide hegemony by saying it's a multipolar world order rather than a unipolar world order with the United States at top. Now, them saying that we have spheres of influence and there's this multipolar world order. So China gets to take Taiwan, Russia gets to take Ukraine, we get to take Venezuela or Greenland, but we get to depose neighboring countries in our sphere of influence. It creates the conditions right before World War II, violating the exact international order that was created to keep the peace, because before World War II, Japan was invading Manchuria. Italy was invading Ethiopia. There were regional conflicts, and they escalated to a point, and they were using this like law of the strong. So, might makes right, rather than some international agreement amongst countries that you do not violate the national sovereignty or territorial integrity. And the United States just essentially violated that itself. Now, this isn't Greenland, because Greenland is part of a NATO country. Venezuela is definitely not, but they are allies with Iran, China, and Russia, which makes this dangerous. And increases much more now the likelihood that we're going to world war. So, yay. Thanks, Trump. You're not a scammer. You didn't scam us about no new wars, right? So, Rubio anticipates no further action in Venezuela now that Maduro is in custody, Lee wrote on X. Maduro was indicted in U.S. federal court in 2020 on narco-terrorism and other charges for running what prosecutors called a scheme to send tons of cocaine to the U.S. through an alleged Cartel de los Soles. He has always denied that. Yeah. They will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil and American courts, Attorney General Pam Bondi said on X about Maduro and his wife. In the Panama case, Noriega ended up in prison for 20 years. Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, who could take charge of government, said she did not know the whereabouts of either Maduro or his wife and demanded proof of life. Jeez. So his wife's not even sure if Maduro's alive. Great. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino condemned the intervention. In the unity of the people, we will find the strength to resist and to triumph, he said in a video message. Another senior official, Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello, appeared on a street wearing a helmet and flak jacket, urging people not to cooperate with the quote-unquote terrorist enemy. Jeez. We're terrorists now to the Venezuelans. They're allies with Iran and Russia, okay? That's a big deal. Russia's allied with China pretty strongly. With Rodriguez potentially taking the presidency, but Padrino and Cabello having significant influence over the powerful military, Venezuelans were nervously guessing what might come next. Analysts say military backing had helped keep Maduro in power so long, despite his unpopularity on the streets and significant evidence that he lost national votes. Action in Venezuela recalls past U.S. interventions. The Venezuelan opposition, headed by recent Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado, said it had no official comment. It says Maduro has repeatedly cheated it of power in elections, as well as crushing street protests and jailing opposition figures. Maduro has mocked Machado as being in Trump's pocket. Maduro has mocked Machado as being in Trump's pocket. Oh man, see that is power politics right there. I don't know. His opposition is in Trump's pocket. How convenient is that? Right? To paint it like Trump is not on the side of Maduro. And it's just kind of funny. I mean, yeah, anyways. Okay, I won't go there. Her whereabouts after recently fleeing Venezuela in disguise to pick up her Nobel Prize were unknown. One source close to the opposition, who asked not to be named, said Maduro's removal was an inside job aided by Venezuela's military. For now, no more military action, but this was a message to the rest of the members of Venezuela's government. Look what the United States is capable of. Get out now and negotiate, the source said, without offering evidence. Jeez. In the early hours of Saturday, today, explosions rocked Caracas and elsewhere, prompting Maduro's government to declare a national emergency and mobilize troops. It said attacks also took place in the states of Miranda, Aragua, and La Guairda. Blast, aircraft, and black smoke could be seen across Caracas from about 2 a.m. for roughly 90 minutes. Residents expressed shock and fear as they captured video of billowing smoke and bright orange flashes in the sky. My love, oh no, look at that, said one woman in a video, gasping at blasts in the distance. Carmen Marquez, 50, a resident of the eastern part of the capital, said she went to her roof and could hear planes at different altitudes, though she could not see them. Flare-like lights were crossing the sky. Explosions. While various Latin American governments oppose Maduro and say he stole the 2024 vote, direct U.S. action revives painful memories of past intervention and is generally strongly opposed by governments and populations in the region. Trump's actions recalls the Monroe Doctrine, laid out in 1823 by President James Monroe, laying U.S. claim to influence in the region. That is key to hear, okay? That's going to be important, everyone. As well as the gunboat diplomacy seen under Theodore Roosevelt in the early 1900s. Yep, so Trump has just basically made this a much more unstable world. He, using the Monroe Doctrine, citing basically influence in the region, there's closely aligns with this whole spheres of influence talk from the multipolar camp. So basically, Russia has rights to their spheres of influence to do what they want, so they can invade who they want. China can invade who they want, and then the United States can invade who they want, just as long as those spheres don't overlap, right? Because that is the failure of this, and why I think Trump is going to benefit from this world war, because eventually spheres of influence overlap. American interests do not stop in the Western Hemisphere, okay? The whole point of World War II is that we were trying to promote peace by ending the war and protecting American national interests outside of the Western Hemisphere. Oh boy. New dawn. The tyrant is gone, the U.S. official says. A new dawn for Venezuela. The tyrant is gone. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau wrote on X. See, yeah, there's justification here, okay? So he does cheat in elections. That's what makes this justified and makes this so dangerous, because it's justified. There's reason to justify this. So people that are going to condemn those in the opposition to Trump, they're going to be like, "Oh, what? You're not for getting rid of a tyrant, right?" But it's like, there's more nuance here. Now this creates a world that is based off of not the international peace that's created after World War II, where national sovereignty and territorial integrity are always upheld and nations can't just invade other nations. But instead, now we get the spheres of influence, this multipolar world order that China and Russia want. Again, I say Trump is doing things that China and Russia and adversaries to America, to the American-led global order, want. Like, he is doing their bidding. It might seem as though, oh yeah, this is a great day for democracy and freedom. This brings us, I don't even know. When there's regime change, look at the wars that we've had in the Middle East over regime change, of deposing their leaders like Saddam Hussein, and this destabilization that comes in that region. Now the Taliban runs Afghanistan, parts of Afghanistan. The Taliban. How successful was regime change there, okay? Especially, this is an oil-rich country. I mean, we've seen this happen before. Anyways. The streets of Venezuela appeared relatively calm as the sun rose on Saturday. Soldiers patrolled some parts, and some small pro-Maduro crowds began gathering in Caracas. Others, however, expressed relief. "I'm happy I doubted for a moment that it was happening because it's like a movie," said Merchant Carolina Pimentel, 37, in the city of Maracay. I don't know. "It's all calm now, but I feel like at any moment everyone will be out celebrating." Venezuelan allies, Russia, Cuba, and Iran, were quick to condemn the strikes as a violation of sovereignty. Tehran urged the UN Security Council to stop the unlawful aggression. Right there. They're basically, that is the words you would hear in the lead up to a world war. Because the international order that's established after World War II specifically has clauses in there about the national sovereignty and the territorial integrity of countries always being upheld, where nations can't just invade other nations. And them citing this new axis that's Venezuela, Russia, Iran, Cuba, when they invoke the language of that international order and to show that the United States that established that international order is now violating it, that gives them basically carte blanche to do exactly what we're doing, since we are just unfaithful to our own established world order. So, yay. Trump's a scammer. Trump had sought a blockade of Venezuelan oil, expanded sanctions against the Maduro government, and staged more than 24 strikes on vessels the U.S. alleges were involved in trafficking drugs, killing more than 110 people. It is unclear under what legal authority the latest U.S. strikes were carried out. Narco-terrorism, that's what they say. Trump's moves risk a backlash from the U.S. Congress, which has the constitutional right to declare war, and from its own political base, which favors an America First policy and largely opposes military and intervention abroad. Yeah, well, they got scammed too. Okay, it's all just a giant scam. No new wars, guys. Now setting the stage for World War III with Venezuela, China, and Russia. And it's not going to happen like this year, but this new spheres of influence that aligns with Russia and China and their spheres of influence, like China wants Taiwan, Russia wants Ukraine. They eventually, like the lead up to World War II shows us, those spheres of influence eventually overlap. And then it's escalated so much that there's already justification and people are already primed in their minds of a world war. And this is just tragic. And this is Trump's doing. Congress did not consign this. They did not approve this. This is just Trump. Venezuelan state-run energy company PDVSA's oil production and refining were normal, and its most important facilities had suffered no damage, according to an initial assessment. Two sources with knowledge of the company's operations said. MST marquee analyst Sal Kavanik said oil prices were likely to jump on the near-term risk to supply, but that the U.S. strike could be bearish in the medium term if a new Venezuelan government results in sanctions being lifted and renewed foreign interest. You know what? Maybe nothing happens. Maybe nothing comes from this, but I don't think it's likely, especially with the words from Tehran. And I'm going to look up what I'm sure Russia has said in response to this, but them citing national sovereignty violations, which is directly invoking the international agreement that the United States has been leading on since World War II. That just shows to the world on the global stage that the United States violates its own agreements, forsakes them. So that makes the world much more unstable, because now they say, hey, look, they're violating their own. This is the international agreement we all have agreed to. And now the United States that has created it and has been leading it is violating it. What gives them the right, just because it's in their sphere of influence? And they're going to say that because Trump just cited the Monroe Doctrine, which essentially is that the United States has gunboat diplomacy in the Western Hemisphere, or we have claim to influence in the region. That's spheres of influence. It's multipolar world order. Anyways, okay, let's see what the rest of the world has to say. Yep, here we go. Russian Foreign Ministry. This morning, the United States committed an act of armed aggression against Venezuela. This is deeply concerning and condemnable. The pretexts used to justify such actions are unfounded. Ideological animosity has prevailed over business pragmatism and the willingness to build relationships based on trust and predictability. In the current situation, it is important, first and foremost, to prevent further escalation and to focus on finding a way out of the situation through dialogue. Yeah, so they're also condemning it, not quoting the international order, but let's see. Latin America must remain a zone of peace, as it declared itself to be in 2014, which Russia has heavily backed the Maduro regime, okay? And Venezuela must be guaranteed the right to determine its own destiny without any destructive, let alone military interference from outside. We support the statement by the Venezuelan authorities and the leaders of Latin American countries calling for an immediate meeting of the UN Security Council. Well, that's great. Okay, so if they're invoking the UN Security Council, that's also invoking the international order. So they're also repeating that of Iran. It'll be really key to see what China says, But like I said, I don't think this means that world war is going to break out right now. I think maybe in a few years, yeah. We'll see probably a mirror image of this somewhere else. Maybe this is the justification China needs to invade Taiwan now. This is all they need. And then what are we going to say? We're going to invoke we use the Monroe Doctrine. What's China's Monroe Doctrine? All right, Argentine President Javier Milei, who's a big Trump supporter. Freedom moves forward, long live freedom, damn it, wrote Milei, a strong regional ally. Okay, well, yeah. That's not surprising. The time to have a timid approach on this subject has passed, Milei had said. Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mexican government strongly condemns and rejects the military actions carried out unilaterally in recent hours by the armed forces of the United States of America against targets in the territory of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, in clear violation of Article 2 of the Charter of the United Nations. Okay, thank you, Mexico. Yes, also showing that this is a blatant violation of the international agreement, the Charter of the United Nations, which was established by the United States after World War II. Mexico emphatically reiterates that dialogue and negotiation are the only legitimate and effective means of resolving existing differences, and therefore reaffirms its willingness to support any efforts to facilitate dialogue, mediation, or accompaniment that contribute to preserving regional peace and avoiding confrontation. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Oh my gosh. I want to establish the facts first. I want to speak to President Trump, and I want to speak to allies. I can be absolutely clear that we were not involved. I always say and believe we should all uphold international law, Starmer said in a statement to British broadcasters. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on X said the bombings on Venezuela territory, this is a left-leaning president of Brazil, The bombings on Venezuelan territory and the capture of its president cross an unacceptable line. These acts represent a grave affront to Venezuela's sovereignty and yet another extremely dangerous precedent for the entire international community. So the left-leaning government of Brazil, the left-leaning government of Mexico, both are calling on the international community. Attacking countries in flagrant violation of international law is the first step toward a world of violence, chaos, and instability, where the law of the strongest prevails over multilateralism. That's exactly right. This is promoting a more unstable world. I agree with that completely. We are now in a much more unstable world. It's because the international law that we all have decided to follow since World War II, so that we don't have another world war because of how awful it was. This brings us closer to it, because now countries are going to see that we're violating the international law to invade countries. Why can't they? If it's their sphere of influence, why can't they? The nation that's strongest can just invade the one that's weakest. That's what this was. Whatever the justification is. Don't focus on the justification. Focus on the effects of this, okay? Ukraine's foreign minister, Andriy Sybiha, Ukraine has consistently defended the right of nations to live freely, free of dictatorship, oppression, and human rights violation. The Maduro regime has violated all such principles in every respect. We stand for further developments in accordance with the principles of international law, prioritizing democracy, human rights, and the interests of Venezuelans. So that's kind of a non-answer, but also invoking the international law. So they were saying, aligning kind of with the foreign policy, with a congressional foreign policy that is against Venezuela from the United States, recognizing that there was a constitutional crisis. Maduro has remained in office far longer than he should be. He's rigged the elections for him, but at the same time, just invading another nation is against the international law. Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, categorically condemns the act of American aggression against Venezuela. Alexander Lukashenko spoke about the consequences of just recently in an interview with American journalists. In particular, he said that it will be a second Vietnam, and the Americans don't need it. Belton News Agency said Natalia Eismont, spokesman for Lukashenko, as saying. So, yeah, Belarus is also considered a kind of a Russian puppet state, so allied with Russia. That's also condemning this American act of aggression. Ecuador President Gabriel Noboa, time is coming for all the narco-chavista criminals. Their structure will finally collapse across the entire... Yep. So you're seeing camps divided now. You're seeing some people are justified in saying America can just invade Venezuela for, narco-terrorism purposes, and others are staunchly opposed. And camps are forming. I don't know. We are just created a massive instability. Let me get rid of this. Uruguay, the government of Eastern Republic of Uruguay is following with close attention and a serious concern that events that have been reported from Venezuela in recent hours, including U.S. airstrikes against Venezuelan military installations and civilian infrastructure. Uruguay rejects, as it always has, military intervention by one country in the territory of another, and reaffirms the importance of respecting international law and the UN Charter. In particular, the basic... Yeah, they're quoting the UN Charter too. This is like such a hit to United States hegemony. People are not going to look at United States. They haven't under Trump more and more to actually lead the world as a promoter of peace. Oh, man. Right now, I'm just going through all of the news about this. I want to see as much foreign policy as I can, foreign statements from foreign governments about how they're aligning. But then we can go into... I want to go into how Trump is he has scammed people now on no new wars. He's scammed, and like Nick Fuentes on the far right, he says that he believes MAGA is going to go down as one giant scam. And I'm going to later, yeah, just get into that because he's a giant. This is on so many occasions he doesn't keep his promises, and I don't care. He's not going to say anything about. This is what makes it so disgusting. He's not going to say anything about how this brings us closer to World War. Okay, if he's asked those questions, it means nothing to him. Okay, right now, I believe in my heart. Look at this. Most people think he's leaving office. Okay, most people think Trump. This is his last term, right? Constitutionally, if he is trying to stay in office to evade prison or whatever, for whatever reason, like Netanyahu is, like Putin is, corrupt leaders use war to gain popularity, to stay in office. Although, yeah. If you remember, he had the Ukrainian president in his office, and he was asking him, he's like, so y'all, in your constitution it says if you're at war, you suspend elections. So, no presidential elections in Ukraine if you're at war. And Trump's like, being his little cheeky self of being like priming his base, and then priming the sympathizers to him to be like ready for a situation where it calls for him to stay in office because of war. This right now, to me, it has all of the fingerprints of that, because the Republicans in the Senate are going to come out and say this is a giant win against this is a giant win for freedom across the world because we're eliminating narco-terrorism, the shadow fleet, or whatever the justification is. But this does bring us closer to World War, because more countries are going to see that the United States just violated its own international order that it established after World War II to just invade a country and its sphere of influence. So now more countries are going to look to the hypocrisy of the United States and be like, well, they're doing it, why can't we? In my mind, I see now China has pretty much every reason to just be like, hey, we're going to depose the Taiwanese president. Because they're sponsors of, I don't know, insert whatever the justification is for their people. It's not appealing to the international law, It's appealing to their people. Trump right now just invaded a country, deposed their president, and he's not appealing to international law. He's just appealing to the people of the United States, ostensibly. No. All right. Uruguay rejects, as it always has, military intervention by one country in the territory of another, and reaffirms the importance of respecting international law and the UN Charter. So another country marked that down for saying how this is a violation of the UN Charter. That's the international world order that the United States has set up. In particular, the basic principles that states must refrain from resorting to the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, or in any other manner consistent with the purposes of the United Nations. Territorial integrity, sovereignty, when you hear those terms, that's a big deal. Those are the exact words in the Charter of the United Nations that the United States established to prevent world war. If we're violating something that prevents world war, what does that say we are doing? It's pretty obvious. Why would Trump, who campaigned on no new wars, be effectuating a reality that is violating the very thing that prevents world war? Okay. European Union High Representative for Foreign Affairs Kaja Kallas. I've spoken with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and our ambassador in Caracas. The EU is closely monitoring the situation in Venezuela. The EU has repeatedly stated that Mr. Maduro lacks legitimacy and has defended a peaceful transition. Under all circumstances, the principles of international law and the UN Charter must be respected. We call for restraint. So, again, bringing up international law and the UN Charter, but also mentioning that Mr. Maduro lacks legitimacy and has defended a peaceful transition. I think that's covers the broad strokes of this situation. Maduro has been, by I think United States posture, illegitimate, has been rigging its own elections. I know that opposition has been suppressed, hallmarks of tyrannical leadership, but this is why it makes it even more dangerous. So if Republicans come back at you and say like, "Oh, you're not for deposing a tyrannical leader who's running narco-terrorism, blah, 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 blah." Listen, by doing that, whatever good comes from that creates more danger. They cannot ignore that. It creates a more dangerous world. You violate international law, other countries will think they can do that too. And if they think that it's American exceptionalism, then again, the people that are saying or listening to China and Russia about them trying to displace the United States atop its American exceptionalism in the world order that the United States leads, it gives them ammunition for their argument for a multipolar world order. Again, it's more dangerous. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, following very closely the situation in Venezuela. We stand by the people of Venezuela and support a peaceful and democratic transition. Any solution must respect international law and the UN Charter. Chile's President Gabriel Boric on X, as the government of Chile, we express our concern and condemnation of the military actions of the United States in Venezuela and call for a peaceful solution to the serious crisis affecting the country. Chile reaffirms its commitment to the basic principles of international law, such as the prohibition of the use of force, non-intervention, the peaceful settlement of international disputes, and the territorial integrity of the states. So let's just recap this, okay? Let's recap this. This is the current global order. The Trump regime says that it's promoting peace in Gaza while being condemned for endorsing genocide because Netanyahu is ethnically cleansing Gaza, trying to just displace all of those people, annex the Golan Heights, annex territory for Israel, invading their neighbor, and the United States under Trump seems to support that against international law. And now, January 3rd, 2026, the United States, under Trump, just invaded and deposed a leader of a sovereign nation in South America against international law, against the Article 2 of the UN Charter of the United States. Yeah. So, it's not looking good for the international rule of law. Does look good for an alternate world order system than the international rule of law that was established and is being upheld by the United Nations, established by the United States after World War II. And that system that is alternate is the one that China and Russia won. Basically, spheres of influence, multipolar world order, where I guess maybe China and Russia are listened to more than the United States is. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro on X, the government of the Republic of Colombia, views with deep concern the reports of explosions and unusual air activity in recent hours in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, as well as the resulting escalation of tension in the region. Colombia reaffirms its unconditional commitment to the principles enshrined in the UN Charter, in particular respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, the prohibition of the use of or threat of use of force, and the peaceful settlement of international disputes. In this region, the Colombian government rejects any unilateral military action that could aggravate the situation or put the civilian population at risk. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. This one's a big deal because they are very close allies with Russia and I think China by proxy. What matters is that when a person realizes the enemy is arrogantly trying to impose something on the country, on the officials, on the government, and on the nation, one must stand firmly against the enemy and bare one's chest in resistance. We will not yield to the enemy. Relying on Almighty God, trusting in God, and with confidence in the support of the people, God willing, and by divine grace, we will bring the enemy to its knees. The timeliness of this, too, the coincidence of this, as Iran faces the leadership of Iran faces a ton of protests right now. That's like some have said it is incredibly weakening to the Ayatollah's reign. Just so happens they can now look and see, hey, look at America again. Who are, like, people that are protesting me? Do we really want to let America do this? Like, it gives him a lifeboat too. Yeah. Why not? Huh. Well, that's a bummer. I haven't been recording this whole time. Start now, I guess. Whatever. Okay, so, I don't know. Let's just peruse this. Britain's Reform UK Party leader, Nigel Farage. The American actions in Venezuela overnight are unorthodox and contrary to international law. But if they make China and Russia think twice, it may be a good thing. I hope the Venezuelan people can now turn a new leaf without Maduro. I think this plays into China and Russia's hand more than it harms their interests or status. Oh, wow. Lebanese armed group Hezbollah. Hezbollah condemns the terrorist aggression and American thuggery against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Hezbollah further affirms its full solidarity with Venezuela, its people, presidency, and government in confronting this American aggression and arrogance. Okay, that's not too surprising. Let's see. What else do we have? Oh, boy. Okay, let's see here. Oh my goodness, my computer is so slow sometimes. Oh my goodness. Please. Oh gosh. Okay. You know what? We're just gonna start this over. Okay. Um. Okay. So. All right. So, okay. If you're just joining, hey, thanks for joining. But wanted to hop on today because this is a pretty seismic shift in the global order. Trump has invaded Venezuela and deposed the leader of a sovereign nation. He's using justification saying that it's narco-terrorism. At least that's what Marco Rubio, his Secretary of State, says. Republicans like Mike Lee are saying... yeah. All right, Republican U.S. Senator Mike Lee said Secretary of State Marco Rubio had told him Maduro would stand trial on criminal charges in the United States. All right, let me start this over. Hang on. All right, thanks for joining, everybody. Today is pretty crazy. The United States, under President Trump, with no act of Congress, just invaded the sovereign nation of Venezuela and deposed their leader on grounds of criminal charges of him being a sponsor of narco-terrorism, apparently. This is profound to the peace, to world peace, because many countries now have condemned this act of aggression as a violation of the international law, the Article 2 of the UN Charter, that upholds a nation's sovereignty and international and territorial integrity. That's key because the United States is the country that established that after World War II, that nations can't just invade other nations. Now, why this is so dangerous is because Russia and China are out there saying the United States is not reliable anymore. We need a new type of world order rather than the existing one, because the United States does not follow that and actually promotes less peace, more violence. So you need to follow our world order, the multipolar world order, which is basically the spheres of influence geopolitical game that was the precursor to World War II. But here, let's just hop right in, okay? Right now, yeah, okay, this is from Reuters. Trump says Venezuela's Maduro captured after strikes. So he has seized the Venezuelan leader. Now, already, oh, come on. Republican U.S. Senator Mike Lee said Secretary of State Marco Rubio had told him Maduro would stand trial on criminal charges in the United States. Rubio anticipates no further action in Venezuela now that Maduro is in U.S. custody. So already you have Republicans in support of this. And I just say again, Venezuela is an ally to Russia and Iran. Right now, the United States is carrying out proxy conflicts with both Iran and Russia. Iran is in Israel right now against Palestine, and the United States is in a proxy conflict in Ukraine against Russia. This does not bode well, okay, for peace, world peace. And Trump was a scammer, and he scammed everybody, because he said that he was going to, be the peacekeeper, bring world peace. Well, guess what? You just violated international law, invaded another sovereign nation. Those that are nations that are questioning the international world order established by the United States are looking at the United States violating its own international law, and instead citing the Monroe Doctrine, something from U.S. policy back in the, my goodness, I don't even know, 1800s. So we're regressing to a time, we're using policy before World War. you don't think that countries like that are against international law are going to start asserting themselves now more? Okay, but let's go to what Iran said here. Okay, come on. Venezuelan allies, Russia, Cuba, and Iran were quick to condemn the strikes as a violation of sovereignty. Tehran urged the UN Security Council to stop the unlawful aggression. So, first, Trump appears to commit a war crime against Venezuelan fishermen. If you retract that, was that like a month or two ago? Then he seizes a Russian-linked Venezuelan oil tanker, which then was condemned by Russia. Then, I believe, seized another oil tanker. And then, this. Deposing the leader of Venezuela. This might be a good thing for democracy in Venezuela, okay? But this might be a terrible thing for democracy in the world. Because now those that are anti-democracy and have their own interests, like Russia, Iran, China, other governments trying to annex their neighbors, who are thinking about annexing their neighbors, they're going to look at this and say, well, the United States is not following its own rules. The international law that we're all supposed to abide, they're not. So why can't Russia or China? You know what? I think I might go with their world order now. Yeah, not good, people. It's not good. But at least it shows even more that people on the left that were saying Trump's going to scam you were right all along. So that's one thing that Nick Fuentes, the far-right political commentator, and the left, the opposition to Trump, have in common. Just the left have been saying it for a very long time. And instead of people listening to them, they listen to who? MAGA, who is now leaving Trump support in droves. But like, you don't even want to say we told you so. You didn't want to get it. You didn't want it to get to that point. But you know what? Yeah. Get scammed, I guess. You don't want to recognize the signs that that Trump is somebody that is a con artist who is unfaithful to anything. I mean, when he swore in to the presidency, he was like the first president probably ever to not swear themselves on anything. Not on a Bible. So it's like, what is he going to be accountable for if not to anything? Like, not a Bible, not any type of law or constitution, or what do you expect? Okay, well, thank you all for joining. That's gonna do it. Okay, yeah. Trump's a corrupt MFer.